Hey, everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome to one of our gorgeous student interviews. We have the beautiful Sienna Ray with us today. Sienna and I have been working with each other for a long time and throughout multiple courses. We are in kindred spirits on many levels, so this is going to be fun. We already decided before we even came on here that we were kind of going to throw the rule books out the window and just really get into everything magical about this experience because we've really been in it together for the last year, haven't we?
Yeah.
So you were a powerful healer long before we even met. You already did a lot of the theta healing trainings and a lot of other embodiment certifications, and you were really deep into your embodiment and women's work. Um, what was it that inspired you to jump into medical intuitive?
Okay, I tiptoed around Medical Intuitive for 4 years. I don't know if you know that, but the moment you launched it, it was in my field. And we haven't worked at that time, but I was like, having a YouTube channel here and there. And when that came out, I eyed it. But I was like, like something wasn't ready. And so for 4 years, like every time it came, I was part of like, okay, if I win the scholarship, then I would do it. Again, on and on and on. And last year, it was there. And I personally had a moment with God where God said, like, when will you stop pretending? Because, as you know, that I had over 30 years of chronic inflammation. And it's so interesting how I feel we humans, I definitely did that, just found ways to cope with it and kind of like, oh yeah, there's the infection again that I have every month coming from the gut, right, into intimate area, super uncomfortable, shame and guilt as a woman around it. But some are always managing it. But I was living on Bali, and Bali has an energy where everything is what's an issue. It just gets heightened. And it was so strong. I had a swollen lymph node under my arm, and I suddenly got panicked. And God was like, when will you stop pretending? And that was where I took radical responsibility like never before, and also took this decision of, I still remember saying to God under tears, I will stand in the fire. I have no idea what's coming, but I will stand and I will not move anymore. I will not run anymore. I will be there. Goosebumps.
Mm.
Oh, and that was the moment when Medical Intuitive came out. I was like, yeah, it really calls me. And I remember we worked together in a mentorship for months because I knew when I said I want to stand in the fire, I won't do this alone. And I knew I want to do this with you. And so that was for me where my soul was like, boof. I just followed the soul more than the ego that was afraid. And that was the whole journey of expansion. Like when I look back, I feel like this is like 4 years ago. Such a different timeline.
You were like if I start like from where we really started like working together in the mentorship, you worked through some very dense family patterns. And I remember how brave you were because you really had to stop abandoning yourself on a lot of different levels. And your family did not make that easy for you. You know, it wasn't a space where, like I said, you walk through the fire was really the energy, like the initiation energy was real. And you didn't just carry that for yourself, you really carried that for you. But then you were also really, I could feel you carrying it for your own clients and for your own movement as well. You know, you really wanted to embody it, and that like that deeper truth of I'm going to be in my truth and I'm going to be who I really am and I'm going to stand for the virtues that I really hold dear in my heart, and I'm going to pay the price for that. And that was an incredibly beautiful, courageous thing to watch. And it was already like you'd already cleared a lot before you came in, and then you just went through layer after layer after layer after layer after layer inside the course. Like I think you must have done hundreds of swaps, not to mention self-healings and clear. I think there was a point where we were doing like 3 or 4 a week, if I remember correctly.
I had a phase where I went a bit in it and then I needed to stop.
Because I remember you saying to me, "What's happening?" And I'm like, "Overwhelmed, too much stuff." I was like, "How much healing are you doing?" And you were like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 hours a week. And I was like, yeah, we need to like allow space for integration. So
Yeah.
tell me like what that was like and how you really found that balance between like going as deep as you wanted to go, but still making space to really embody it.
I feel like you brought actually the importance of embodiment, that the pause of integration to me. I feel like that was something I was lacking as a healer for myself to really understand, look, trauma is on zero, healing happened. Now we need, first of all, the identity shift, and there needs some time for learning real skills. I really learned that through you, to understand actually having compassion. And really, this is why I feel I grew so much as a person, but also as a healer in my own work with my clients. They have shifts like they never had before, because I'm now in a way different level of understanding what healing really means. Like you said, healing the trauma is just zero. But then who are you becoming? Who are the skills you're learning? Like having that compassion. And again, the radical honesty of like where I'm literally on a human level, not having a skill and I need to learn it. That helped me so much. Also, the compassion that came in. I feel like I have so much more compassion. I feel like I'm gonna
Mm.
cry today when we speak. This is really like looking back, I have really much more compassion of like an understanding of how a wound, without getting into victimhood, without identifying with it, but understanding how deeply one trauma I healed has effects till now. And I do need to repair it. I do need to still layer by layer integrate new things, for example, in relating with humans. I feel like I now understand certain effects way better than I ever did before. And that's,
I
yeah,
want to really take a moment to honor your answer to that question, because it brings up something so powerful and so important. And so much of what I call like a healing frenzy comes from this like rescuer wound where it's like fix, 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 because you feel like deep down it's never going to be enough, right?
yeah,
And believing that you deserve, like you said, that nurturing and that compassion as you learn really important new skills. And I think there's an element of like an ego pride bruise there, or at least there has been for me in my own healing, where when you really have to honor the fact that you do not understand something, right?
yeah.
That I didn't, my ego did not like that. It was like, what? There was really something there that I didn't get. Um, I think particularly as women, because we also often like feel dumb or like stupid, but those lessons are not superficial. Those virtues are really, really deep, and embodying them in practice, it's like unconditional love embodied in practice is not an easy ask, right? It's a profound emotional, spiritual, and physical exercise. And I think that was very big for me as well, was really stopping and going. I think for after years, more than 10 years of like doing a lot of trauma work and going, there's something beyond this, because if it was looking at all the traumas, I would be there by now and I'm not. And I think that can really make some people have a burnout. I think it can make them feel like healing doesn't work.
Yeah. Or keep them in a spiral. That's what I'm seeing. And now I can help every woman I work with understand that also way better of like, look, love, you need some space and some time to integrate certain things. It's not that you go 3 step back. It's just you don't know yet how to do certain things. Because exactly what you said, I've been in that, in the spiral of rescue with others. I still feel this year, I really feel like I let the rescuer die and I'm going into a new archetype, and I'm definitely in a lot of rebirth. At the moment, I'm like, okay, we're not stopping. It's this, we're gonna just keep on rolling. And I feel like this stopping this cycle, I think that shifted something really big for me too. And that's where MIT for me is so powerful, is this um what you said, when you come out of this, I just need to fix and fix till I'm finally worthy and worthy. That kept me stuck. I've been working on a lot of things, but I've not gone deep. And MIT is for me something like you said, we don't play shallow, we play deep. Like some stuff is just like a little radio now in my world. When you come up, hanging out with you and that over a year in all the different containers, it's like, ah, there she is. But yeah, it is what it is. Like, and this is why also now the work is so much different. And the beautiful thing is the faith in God is so much different for me too. Like, I feel like the technique I learned before is a lot of me doing and asking, but this is really you have the keys, and bring you into that divine space where knowing comes up, and I know I can hold you. And I feel like I really learned that the healing comes from this deep presence and ability to be there for someone. I just had a client last week telling me, when you said to me, this is not too big for God and this is not too big for me, thank you, because that allowed me to really open up goosebumps. And
Oh,
And I'm like, that warms my heart. That's what I'm so grateful for, not proud of, because that's what I'm standing for my work. But I'm just proud because I know, you know, what you said. I can only do that because I went so freaking deep the last year.
Shit got real.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's I feel like what I love about you is you're just real. First of all, what I love about is that was the first container I've been in where I feel like my greatness as a healer is asked. It's like, no, I want you to thrive. I want you to go deep. And I could ask all my questions. And you do know I ask a lot of questions because I just want to do the best thing I can do. I freaking care about the people I work with and I care about me and I know the responsibility. So but I love that. I remember a moment I asked you about something, you told me, oh, you took the little, hook the subconscious gave you, you needed to actually follow that. And I was sitting with that, and that was one of the best moments. It felt really shitty to my ego, but it was so good because I finally broke through something and I could be like, I had more capacity to hold me making a mistake and then being like, see, you're still a great healer. You can still correct it. You can still help that person. But look, like it was this real honesty, and it was really not a nice feeling, but I was so grateful. I was like, thank you. Because really, it gave me a different backbone. I was not afraid of seeing if I make a mistake. So, and I feel like, that's what I mean. Like in MIT, you are looked at what you're doing, and that's different.
I think it was something I think I want to honor that what you brought to the table because that's a very important point is that MIT, like we're really in it together. It's not like it's like we said, we're talking power to power. I'm not babying you guys and I'm not acting like you can't handle the truth, right? Um, and I think so many healers are getting held back because the online course space and even the physical course space is just do practices, but there's no feedback, there's no eyes on you, there's no witnessing. And on the one hand, like you said, it feeds the ego, but on the other hand, you have no idea why the hell you're stuck. And it really feeds the people pleasing as well, because then you're looking to your partner to validate you instead of looking to that divine or looking to somebody who's a bit further ahead. And especially when somebody's like, you've been one of my favorite people to work with as a student, as a client, as a teacher, because you are so committed to excellence.
Mm.
You know, um, I love the curiosity. I love the attention to detail. It's so German. Just so you know, it's like to the nth degree. And it made me go really deep in myself as a teacher. There were questions you asked me that I never really sat down and thought, is this something that I did just because I want to solve a problem, or was there really a deeper strategy to this? Like, how does this really work when the chips are down in this particular situation to this particular problem? Um, and that's one of the things I think it's power to power, because it's real relationship, right? It's real vulnerability on both sides to answer curious, like really deep inquisitive questions about your modality being applied in real time, right, to different studies. It really challenges me, but
Mm.
it also really challenges you guys, because you apply it in a different way. You're like, what happens if I tweak this? What happens if I don't follow that rabbit hole and I take that one instead, right? What happens if I don't let them dissociate and I make them stay here and be present with what's arising? um and I do think our container is unique in that sense, because I like you. I've never been in that space in spirituality. I've been in that space in hypnosis. I've been in that space with, counseling and psychotherapy. But in spirituality, I really found that was being bypassed, that real feedback. And I think we're hungry for it, to be honest.
Yeah, and also feel not going alone on this journey, and especially because yeah, for me, everything shifts because it's that I really do my best to find it in words, but it's real. It's just real. And it's also healing is de-romanticized. In MIT, we just get real. And it's really about feeling the feelings. It's feeling the freaking feelings. And at the same time, it's so multidimensional. I mean, you need to get in it to get it. Like, not to pitch it, but honestly, I can do my best to give my experience, but it's really multidimensional. Like what I had experiences in swaps where I remember telling everybody in the group, oh my God, I just really met my multidimensional soul as one of the most profound, beautiful things.
Hmm.
That is so deep. At the same time, it is the work within a child, for example, like the level that I'm also able now to understand. I think sometimes we do it a bit, it doesn't need to be complicated, but I feel like sometimes healing is like just reunite with your inner child. Well, what if she doesn't want to talk to you? What if you're scared of her? How do you navigate? And how, as I'm a practitioner, can actually, for me, it's literally, I realize I'm actually a mother. Every freaking session, I'm a mom. And like I am a mediator and a mom, and like the capacity to love and to understand, and also look at my ego. Like if the healing takes longer, doesn't mean I do something wrong. It's just their tempo to heal, right? I love the shadow work module you did. Like the way you also support us as healers, like power to power. How can you also take responsibility? Like that was so beautiful and eye-opening of like, oh, where's my coping mechanism if somebody goes into a reaction? Why can I grow even better? And like, no, we're not going to do that. Like, how can I regulate? Like, there's so much things that you put in that I feel is very important, especially the way we go deep in MIT, because yeah, it needs to be understanding how can I support someone in a big reaction. But I think it comes down to meeting myself first, because I've been working with you in swaps because I know certain things I'm not going to do alone, but now I can hold myself so much more alone in big feelings.
Hmm.
And that created so much
What's supposed to
self-trust.
happen? That is
Yeah.
what's supposed to happen. Your spiritual stamina, your spiritual capacity to hold your rougher emotions will get better,
Yeah.
right? Because you were in a space where you learned how to hold that and regulate that for yourself. But let's break it down step by step because you always bring so much to one space. Um, I think that we're back to the virtue of presence, and we don't just talk about that in MIT, we really practice it. And so much of spiritual bypassing is let's just integrate our inner child, let's just forgive the perpetrator. And they're not present with the resistance, with the emotions, with, to be honest, the often the agony inside that space, right? They want to shift straight into, they want the alchemy of forgiveness and unconditional love without the virtue of acceptance or presence, and the two things are paradoxical. Without acceptance, nothing moves, right? It's what we said about the feelings. Without being with the rage, with the jealousy, with the dissociation, with the the feelings of being trapped and stuck, etc., and learning how to move through them with real courage and to process them, you know, inner child, inner adolescent, inner parent, that the part is in pain and it sure as hell isn't going to trust you if you can't even take it as it is, right?
Yeah.
And it might please you, it might even change its behavior or its words to tell you what you want, but then the moment you're not actively controlling it or forcing, it's going to go back to the old behavior unless it's really embodied and understood, right? Alchemize the suffering that was holding it there in the first place. And I think that goes to also our ability as teachers, right? To understand that teaching is not just dictatorship. It's like you said, it's a real holding of space for another energy to master something it didn't understand before. And I think that's really hard when we are in a world where we've kind of been taught that all emotional immaturity is somehow a form of misbehavior.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like, well, this is a bad part. And maybe if I just talk at it, it's gonna just its soul and stop bugging me. Right? Um,
Ah,
so I think you're right. And I think the shifting into like really being able to go where you're being asked to go in your multidimensional self, in your real self. And like there's a part of us that wants to make the weird like funny or not as intense or somehow not as significant. We're like, oh, it's a past life, so then I don't have to feel my feelings, right? Or, oh, I got born as a witch, so I don't really have to feel the feelings. And I'm like, okay. This is correct.
Actually, it's very funny. Like, yeah, it's like that ancient rage. But
Yeah.
I'm celebrating that because I can hold that now. I don't know what's happening at the moment, but I'm definitely moving through some layers. And I think it has to do with the love that I cultivated in me, that now these aspects actually come up. That I can own, wow, I'm still having layers of disappointment and rage with men, like so strongly. You know, me, feminine embodiment, and we're gonna go there and empowerment and la la. And I'm like, dang it, man, but there's really something, and it might be the collective, it might be something else, it doesn't matter. The feeling is there and it wants to be just felt, or also even feelings like revenge. I love to really talk about, like, not just talk about what you teach. And I feel like we had the space to, because you brought it up, you're not afraid of saying, look, this is a shadow that every human has, but we don't like to feel it. The jealousy, revenge, envy. Um, and because of that, bringing it in and me learning to actually be like, oh, hi, you know, then I can also help other women work through it. Like if I'm afraid of it, I can't help you, and that sucks. But yeah, the part, you know, I feel like maybe that's part of my zone of genius, but I really help women stepping into their rage in a really beautiful way.
Yeah.
And the reclamation of their voice and their power is just something every time I'm just having so much fun. But I'm also encouraging them, like, you know, we know in MIT with different parts, and one of this perpetrator, I'm like, if you want to kill them, just please do it in the heart of God. We're not gonna hurt anybody, right? I'm like obviously
Yeah.
saying it with a lot of compassion, but and every time they get that permission of like, I see you, you're great, you're inherently good, you know your little one is inherently good, but let her just be honest. And just, you know, and every time they're the children, they know what to do. And it's amazing. Like I'm just, yes, yes, you can feel the energy shift. Finally, it's moving, right? You can see it out of the kidneys and the liver, the spine, like whatever the
Yeah.
disappointment, the grief. And it's that the space can come back. And what I always love is to see when that is released, at least it's my experience, to actually see that the wound itself suddenly turns into the illumination and has gifts and understanding and always knew, you know, what's actually going on. And that's for me what I really love is understanding there is, I call it the divine child, like that always guides. I have it like as an inner aspect of me besides my others. And she sometimes teaches me things and I'm always crying. She's like, she takes me, it's like, we're gonna go in the heart of God now. Or no, you got this. I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, but that's for me self-love and empowerment coming back home, that everybody's welcome, even the parts that are still pissed at me, maybe, or the world. It's okay. And I think that's holding the duality of being a human. Holding the duality of being a human is actually, I feel like, what helps us or me to be more in a higher octave or come back to love and to God, because I'm not want to change it. I just allow it. And I think that's what MIT for me definitely was, the journey, what it gives to me, and yeah, you know, extending into my work field.
Authenticity, particularly like you said, like I think God has a sense of humor, and I think paradox is a profound part of the human experience, right? That ability to have that the bird's eye view and to have that enlightened aspect, and at the same time really be profoundly present with what is happening in the human experience. Um, it's important to be able to do, but it's not easy to be able to do. Like we want to be one thing instead of being that foot in both worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right, particularly not just around men, but around so many things, around men, around politics, around support. There is real disappointment and grief happening in the collective consciousness. But we don't stop having an experience as women because we're having a spiritual experience as teachers and as leaders as well. Right? Having healed your past doesn't mean that people don't mess up in the present. And your ability to be present with that also changes, because I think that's so interesting, because it shifted for me so profoundly as well, is that the more my sense of authenticity got stronger, the more I was willing, the more I was able to be with my own shadow, the less I had to look away from other people's, and the less I was willing to like um make excuses for it. The more, not in like in a judgment way, but really in a, if this isn't, not even in a conversation with them, but before I'd be like, oh, you know, they'll figure it out at some point. And now because the rescuers moved, it's like, okay, if nothing changes, is this a relationship I want? Right. And not just an intimate setting, it's really up leveled my friendships and relationships as well. There was more than a couple of coffee dates that I've been on within the last 6 months where I was excited about going. And then when I got there, it was all gossip, or it was all like the way that they were speaking about their lives or their people. Or I was like, this doesn't align with who I am at all. Like, if I'm really honest, like, this doesn't serve anybody in any, you with me?
Yeah.
And before I
Yeah.
would have made excuses, I would have,
Mm.
kind of prioritized trying to find belonging and try to fit in just to get a squish of it, right?
Mhm.
Instead of really being honest with, yeah, this might work if I pretend for like 3 or 4 weeks, right? And this might become an acquaintance, but then it's going to blow up in my face, because this isn't really my value system. This isn't really who I am.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a big part that also came through the work for me was accepting my humanness. I feel like I'm so much more in my body and understanding, yes, I'm a healer and I'm a teacher, but like you said, I'm a woman. I still have my own human experience. I get to have community and friends around me. I definitely haven't had that. And that is something, yeah, being in that vulnerable space to also admit on a human level, what am I missing, right? What is creating maybe sickness through that? And not, not spiritualizing it, but just really being accepting that humanness. And yeah, definitely. I really loved also how we celebrated in the space. And I think that's something that I also learned is celebrating success and like breakthroughs and being seen in that. And it's really the first time in my life that this year, as you know, I moved to Portugal and I arrived and I said for the first time when I met people, I'm so proud of who I am. And I'm so proud of who I'm becoming. I'm so proud of the life that I did. And part of it is really me going through medical intuitive. I'm freaking fucking, pardon my language, proud that I did this year. I know what it meant for me to jump in on many different levels. I'm also proud of how I show up in the spaces. I feel like before I was like, I could be too much. Am I asking too much? Like this, I always shrinked. I was afraid of asking all those questions or getting weird feedback from colleagues. And I was like, this time I like, maybe I had it in between, but at one point I was like, I don't care if it's something triggered, then this is a really a them problem. I have no problem to say I'm sorry if it really hurts someone, but if I'm taking up space and I'm saying, asking my questions and I'm in integrity, then I need to learn that if others are uncomfortable to let them. But I feel like I just, I'm just proud of how I show up. Like there's that I can say that's like huge. You know me where I come from. Like that's
I
huge for
think I
me to
think you
say.
should
And
be really proud of how you show up. And I think you do lift the spaces. I think you do lift the spaces you're in, like I said, by the level of excellence that you bring. And you are relentless, in your pursuit of you're relentless in your pursuit of truth. You're relentless in your pursuit of God. You are relentless. You are meticulous. I've had many students over the last 4 years, and you have gone into real, like, further than anyone I've ever had on the course when it comes to questions, etc. You really kind of let yourself go in that direction. And it's what you said about the inner child, like the student archetype has many faces. And that, teacher's pet student energy, like, I'm really afraid I'm going to get made fun of, I'm really afraid I'm going to trigger the other students, and then shutting yourself down from your brilliance or what you're capable of because you might be in a different zone than the other students. um and I was very aware of that. I was very aware that you were bringing that face of that archetype into that space. And I was also very aware of what other people were going through in response to it, in both good and bad ways, because that's the nature of the beast, right? You're holding like a collective student space. There's going to be different people anchoring different student energies. Um, and I think you did an incredible job of being yourself and of really getting your needs met and of giving other people permission to really step into, you know, asking a million questions and being curious and being creative and really allowing yourself, like, you also, like, were so raw. You went into, sexual trauma, you went into profound spiritual trauma, you just went with what was rising, and you were very vulnerable when it came to dropping case studies, when it came to dropping client examples. You actually scared me in the beginning because you were just like, I'm going to apply this straight away. And I was like, ooh, never had anybody just take it and run with it this fast. And then I was like, something, it's like my son, he's 4, but he can already, like, took him one afternoon to take the stabilizers off his bike. I thought it was going to take him like 3 days. And then at the end of one afternoon, he was like stabilizers off and going down hills. that's your kind of energy. It's like larger than life, and I can do it faster and I can do it better, and it's all going to be okay, right? It's like that, like we said, like, let me be big, let me thrive, let me figure out where I am. And if it's messy, it's all right, because I'm figuring it out. And I think that's very powerful. Like, if you want the kind of creativity you have and the kind of power you have, you can't be afraid of the chaos that it brings sometimes, as the person's trying to figure out how they're going to anchor that kind of space and how they're going to hold that kind of space. Um, and the invitation is there, like you said. The invitation for you guys to be great and to be big and to really shine is there. I'm not going to sabotage that or get in your way or compete with you, because I've worked on enough of my teacher shadow to not have that shit there. But I think it's still very brave, and it's huge. It's a huge compliment to me on your part that you took the invitation, right? And that you really played all out and you really took advantage of that space in the way that you did. Because I think it really helped everybody else, and it really pushed me into another level as well, and how I think about the modality and how we had to apply it to so many case studies, and how we had to problem solve, because most healers wouldn't turn around to you and say, I got to this part with the client and this worked, but I feel like this didn't work. Right? They wouldn't be vulnerable enough to take it there. I would have to go in and observe and say, hey, this worked, but that didn't work. With you, you were like, here, case study. This is where I got this. And it's like, okay, let's just do this. Right? So it was really amazing, and I really appreciated you for doing that.
I had no idea how it expanded you too, so thank you so much for sharing that. Gonna make me tear up a bit. But yeah, that's really beautiful to hear. And I love the image that you had from your son. I feel like you're describing me how I was a child and I had never the space to be like that. So I feel like it's that, yeah, it's that. I feel like the initiating of how I am in my power. I really had that space, and I'm really grateful for you also how you guided me and how you gave me that space. And obviously I checked in with you, right? I'm not going relentlessly on my clients like, hey, let's do something. Like I'm, of course, the interesting thing is suddenly I felt like a guidance from God, do it. And I'm like, okay, I thought like in 3 months. And then I started, I remember we had a conversation, then you gave me some guidance. And then I thought maybe I need to stop and get better. But then but then again, it just happened. I was like,
Kept
God
going,
was
yeah.
like, you go there. And it worked out really well. And I feel like because of that, I'm now where I'm at. And I mean, there's more to come, right? But I was really like on the training field. And I'm really grateful for every woman because they trusted me immediately. Some of them didn't even know me for a while. They came with recommendation. They're like, I don't know, I don't care what you do. I trust you. And I'm like, this is just, I'm big gratitude to everybody because of them, this is where I'm at now.
I think, like, exactly, like, it's as a teacher and as a mother, right? Because like you said, those elements do come out in healing sessions, and they come out that they don't just disappear because they've gone somewhere else. There is a real nurturing aspect to being a teacher, right? And I think particularly with your star students and with your advanced students, there is this real tightrope between setting them free and potentially pleasing them and allowing them to hurt themselves because they're going faster, like they're running before they can walk. And without anchoring the roots in, they end up, it's kind of like, I guess, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Have you read that book? Where, well, she's a seagull and he's trying to master flight, like we try to master life. And he ends up dying, but he calls it rapidly altering his state of consciousness. He ends up dying because he's like diving bombing into the ocean so fast that he dives bomb too fast, right? And he crashes. And I think with the not just students, but with healers, and I think that's what's the cause of so much burnout is those stars, right? We want to go so fast. We want to really go through to that full potential, but without those, it's like roots and wings, right? Without those anchors, without, like I said, feeling those feelings, without someone to care enough about us to say, this is amazing, but this is like not strong enough that to go this high, you need to have this strong, right? You need to have wing muscles to be able to fly that far. You need to master your landing before you do a dive. You're going to crash into the, right? It's that tweaks that make a big difference. I think with your advanced students, and even like with any child that's big in energy, like exactly like I said about my son, like it's amazing that he managed without the stabilizers, but the same if it had gone wrong, like if he'd hurt himself, if he'd, if it had been a broken, I would have tortured myself. Does that make sense? So it's like to be emotionally vulnerable as a teacher requires a lot of emotional regulation because
Mhm.
you really are like, right, if you let them fly, are they going to soar? Are they going to be okay? But if they crash, you take responsibility for that too, or at least I definitely do. And, you really, especially with online teaching, there's only so much you can see of what someone's doing. There's only so much you can gauge of where it's not really like in real life. That's one of the things I love about teaching in real life is you can see where everybody is in the room and you can really see their tone, their body language, their energy, like how they're shifting, how they move in closer with their clients. That stuff becomes really invisible online.
Mhm.
So you have to really use your distance healing skills. You have to really be tuned in a way that's just easier in real life, right? But yeah, what you said about being allowed to be big, I think that's why it's so hard for some teachers to really allow their students to go big and to go fast is, you know, giving them permission to soar, but also giving them permission um to crash without taking not without I wouldn't say I don't take it personally, but it's more the you just have to give them permission to break your heart a little bit if it goes wrong,
Mm.
you know? And to accept that you are attached and that you do care about whether they, and I think that's hard for a lot of people to admit, that they really are attached to the outcome or whatever. It's easier to try and wrap you up in bubble gum.
And we are, like, I definitely saw that with me, if the healing doesn't work, oh, it's me, the typical thing going back to that. And instead of being, no, let's not put that, like, somehow I could shift that. I still have certain things when something is, especially when there's new things presenting, I'm still checking, can I do it better? Or is this like a call for just a different tool? Because that person maybe needs something I've never done before. But I
Yeah.
feel like I'm in a great place that I no longer go into a very abandonment or weird identity. It's just not there. Like, I definitely died a few times in this training. And it's funny when you said everything, I remember for some reason just came back the moment we started. I remember my overwhelm and my ego being like, I have no fucking clue how to do this, and feeling like a beginner's mind, 10 years theta healing. Well, that ego can go out of the door and we're gonna learn with the beginner's mind. And the beautiful thing is the practice sessions were amazing for me and really was beautiful to come together and know we can call you in and like really be in real life there. And then obviously the swaps and just going with it, right? And understanding. And I mean, the scripts you're giving, for me, they're amazing because it's like this outline. And I feel like once I do it a couple of times and I can free flow and I'm away from it, then obviously I can also be so present with God in a different way. And yeah, for me, it just feels like 4 years ago, but I still definitely remember the feeling in the beginning. And then I like it. It's a very humbling experience. And actually looking back, I think it's somehow insane that okay, in respect to every creator of modalities, I just say I appreciate that in MIT, the depth of, and it comes to you as a teacher, 100%, the depth of integrity you have and the virtues you're bringing in. Because I'm like, when doctors do surgeries, they're gonna get overlooked, right? Like, how are you doing this? When people do bake a bread, they have people look at it. But not in every spiritual training have somebody looking, what are you actually doing? What is happening? Oh, the person's crying. Can you handle that? So I teach myself, and I think I came in with MIT with a good range of that. I'm comfortable with some feelings. I definitely learned way more through the one-on-one with you and then swaps to whole bigger feelings because it's a normal psychology thing that I also learned through you because I did the trauma course before MIT. And by the way, I wanted to let you know something live here. It changed something. I had a situation of assault when I was an adult at 3. And there was one, it took me so many years to forgive myself. Psychology didn't help. But when I listened to that trauma course, understanding the different responses and why I wasn't able to go somewhere else, that was the first moment I had, like, gosh, emotional. This day today. But I had a first moment and literally feel like this dove coming. Like I could I'm like, don't be hard on yourself. Like I was so angry because I know I'm such a powerful woman. And it made me so angry that my body could move, that I could not like punch that person. But through that course, I understood psychology things and in spiritual realms, they're not taught. And I'm having this, maybe that's what you say, my relentlessness for excellence. It makes me a bit mad. I'm like, why the heck are you not teaching this? We're going into the soul, we're going into big feelings that needs to be in. So I'm really grateful that this is in Medical Intuitive, that we talk about it. And obviously, if you want to go deeper, you do the trauma thing, like the trauma module, because it's very deep. It's very, yeah. But it helped me so much understanding how just on a very human level how we are coded. And this is not something, if I don't understand this, God can't move, right? Because I was really mad at myself, like, I have all these tools, why can't I move it? I was looking back in so many moments in a really deep freeze or flight, and now I'm like, and I thought I can dig it away. No, looking back, I would have needed a hug, a warm blanket, somebody to talk to, and somebody who helps me be in my body. Not spiritual work, not more out of the body, but I mean, I learned so much through this of not having it earlier and now having it. So that definitely shifted a lot for me. Yeah.
Was like, I think trauma, it's quite interesting how it came to being, because the trauma training that you're talking about was originally part of the advanced course, and it started percolating through the first round of medical intuitive and then the second. And then I thought, you know something, I'm teaching it so much over and over again in the practice groups, but it's not coming into the actual modules, so we need to find a way of putting it in. But at the same time, you, as usual, like cart before the horse, you did the hard thing first, right? So you did the advanced thing first. And part of why I made the advanced modules available separately, as well as making them part of the advanced container, is because exactly what you said. I think some people just need the mother wound, or just need the trauma course, or just need the inner child one. And those are already very deep dives in by themselves. Um, but exactly what you said of, it profoundly triggers people to be aware of the different states and the way that you can get locked into those specific trauma loops for a long period of time. And a part of me thought maybe I should put it at the beginning, and then there was another, like you said, I got that nudge of either people are going to be attracted to it, or they're going to be ready for it after, because otherwise you kind of trigger all their traumas in one go
Mm.
before actually giving them away. Because after you already had theta healing, but if you don't have something like MIT or something like theta healing, and you're just straight in there, right there, you need that safe space, you need that context. And
Yeah, I understand you. I'm very grateful for all the training I had before because that made me definitely go deep the way I went. Yeah.
yeah, but I do think that there's so much. I do not think the spiritual space is trauma informed. I think a lot of the coaching, healing, and breathwork modalities are, a lot of people are experiencing profound releases without understanding why they can't sustain the vibration that they are attaining afterwards, because they don't actually understand that releasing an emotion isn't this creating the cause, the memory, the trauma, their nervous system. And it's no different than having a counseling session, having a really good cry, but then having to have the same conversation next week, right? With the same level of emotion. The fact that it's somatic versus dialogue doesn't change the fact that it's a release, not an embodiment or integration. And that's what you said about like the virtues and about the integrity and about the understanding that that person has to master. And particularly, like the most obvious one, for example, is like relationships, particularly intimate ones. The number of people that I've had come in, whether it's medical intuitive or the trauma one, they go, I'm dating the same person, right? And they're like, I've learned my lessons. And you're like, no. They're like, I've learned them. I'm like, what do you think they are? And they're like, I have to choose better. And I'm like, yeah, we have not learned our lessons. Let's go back. Right? So just because you're frustrated with something doesn't mean you've got the patience or the integrity to sit there and go, there's something here I don't understand. If the lesson is repeating, it's because I haven't mastered it. Right? I've got to be really still. I've got to be really look at it. Choosing differently is tip of the iceberg when it comes to creating long-term sustainable systems.
Yeah.
Right? In friendships. And it's what you said, we superficial answers, superficial life, superficial situations, superficial band-aid solutions. So it's not easy to be in that humbleness, and it's not easy to go back and really look at not just the core feelings, but the core strategies that we were taught, right? And there are visible aspects to abuse and trauma, and there are invisible aspects to abuse and trauma. And where
Yeah.
most of us are good as the visible bits, like we're good at dealing with the trauma that left bruises, we're good at dealing with the trauma that's like normal verbal abuse, but the neglect, the coercive control, the financial control, even the erotic element to it, right? So much of us are aroused by some form of coercive control or financial abuse or financial surrender, and it's still very much in the spiritual spaces, this eroticism, right, around there being some level of dominance and control. And it just is, it's just sexualized, whether it's 50 Shades of Grey, whether it's tantra, it's etc. There's an energy of submission and that flies in the face of sovereignty, right?
Mhm.
And it's not easy to be with. Those things, those shadow aspects are not easy to be with, and they're so I said they require a profound level of presence and like that humble bit to be like, yeah, my ego doesn't like this, but there's something here. I wouldn't be reliving this. I wouldn't be repeating this if there wasn't something a lot more,
Mhm.
you know? And especially like with disease, one of the things I love about the body is that it doesn't lie. So you can be
Mhm.
like, I'm done with this. And it's like, oh, here we are again. It's like, yeah, no, we're not done with this, right? We're not even nearly done with this. Um, or I have raised my standards, and then 2 seconds later, it's like, you know, you're questioning your decision, you're doubting yourself, and it's like, yeah, it's not been integrated,
Yeah.
right?
That has
Um,
also changed big time is the relationship to my body. Like I'm very grateful for her. Like the yeah, I mean the homework we ha had in the training, that was not just homework. Like
no,
that
it's not just homework.
that was portals. Especially in the beginning, I was like, Jesus, I don't know what's happening. Like, even school trauma coming up. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna deal with this now. I'm already busy with that one. But yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good. It's a lot of self-inquiry. And I mean, we're sovereign, right? We have a free will, how deep we want to go or not. Even in MIT, you choose what to do. I mean, you're not, you relate from power to power. You're not gonna be like, did you do that? That's like, what? No, like like nobody's controlling the homework. You do it how you want to do it. But yeah, I feel like that's what I'm really celebrating is the relationship and understanding, even when stuff comes up right now or my body's showing me who, then I know, okay, I do need to be a bit more slowing down and get silent as something is going on. And but I don't feel powerless anymore. And you do know that about me. That was a big thing for me, always feeling powerless from the experience of a childhood and understanding, no, I'm very much powerful and my body is beautiful and she just tells me things whenever I'm ready. I just need to sit down alone with somebody and listen to it and then have the courage to take new choices and new actions. And I think what you said in the beginning, being ready to stand in the fire, it's like the bigger energy of like and being okay with that everything. You said paying the price, and I think sometimes there is a price to pay. I'm, in not in a sacrifice way, but
Yep.
there is something to it because what I realized is the moment I stood in my truth, and you do know that, I saw true faces and I had to stand with also that what I'm doing with that now. I'm not receiving what I wished I received. So what am I doing with that, right? And to not fall back, but just holding the ground. And I feel like, yeah, I feel like that's the ingredient anyways for long-lasting transformation, right? Healing disease and creating a life that really is serving is, I feel like it's not just a one-time thing. It's a courage to just be honest and take responsibility, or even being honest where am I giving my power away? Where am I like, oh, where am I like, not doing that, what I'm asked for. Yeah.
There's so much stuff, particularly for women. Like we are healing so much misogyny and sexism that's still rampant in the culture, in the politics, in the family systems, and that's still being very much gaslit on many different levels. On level of emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse. It's still, and social media wise, it's now got a whole life of its own. You know, and it's not messing around. It's no different than a racism wound, or that and it runs across cultures, right, across religions, across different backgrounds. And it's it's not one of those wounds that you can heal and be like, oh, it's in the past. It's still active, it's still open. We're still moving through it. And I think particularly so much of how we were gaslit as girls And trust me, I understand that men are, and boys are gaslit in their own ways. But for the purposes of this conversation, so much of how we're gaslit as girls is being told that this problem is already resolved and that it doesn't exist, right? Or that this is somehow like our role is to be powerless, our role is to be subservient, our role.
What I'm asked for. Yeah.
So much stuff, particularly for women. Like we are healing so much misogyny and sexism that's still rampant in the culture, in the politics, in the family systems, and that's still being very much gaslit on many different levels. You know, on level of emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse, it's still, and social media wise, it's now got a whole life of its own, you know, and it's not messing around. It's no different than a racism wound, or that and it runs across cultures, right? Across religions, across different backgrounds. And it's it's not one of those wounds that you can heal and be like, oh, it's in the past. It's still active, it's still open. We're still moving through it. And I think particularly so much of how we were gaslit as girls, and trust me, I understand that men are, and boys are gaslit in their own ways, but for the purposes of this conversation, so much of how we're gaslit as girls is being told that this problem is already resolved and that it doesn't exist, right? Or that this is somehow like our role is to be powerless, our role is to be subservient, our role is to be surrendered. And to God, maybe, but to another being, that's a whole different conversation. And that is a very difficult reality to be aware of in a world that's still asleep, and that still proactively rewards, pleasing and trauma.
In ignorance, there's something in
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, I think you can do superficial women's work, which is absolutely not what you do, and not really address the deep undercurrents and themes, like I said, about rage and about the sister wound and about, the witch wounds and about like that real um, divine feminine energy. But the reality is then the results remain superficial. There are massive shifts happening in humanity. Women are going through another awakening, another initiation about what we're going to stand for, what we're going to allow. It's what you said, like, what am I didn't receive what I wanted to receive. I wasn't and it, like, for example, there was a study done, I think it was 2024, where they were looking at feedback that successful men received versus successful women. I think it was something silly like 26% of successful men received negative feedback, and 78 or 77 of powerful women received negative feedback. And this is still the environment that we are alchemizing, right? It's kind of like alchemizing racism back before the civil rights movement. We're still alchemizing sexism in a world where a lot of the population is still forced to cover itself from head to foot and can't leave the house. It is not something it's not a zeitgeist. It's still very much active. And I think particularly when we're looking at like sexual abuse wounds or things like that, it's not like we can go outside without being treated like sexual objects. It's not like you can be in a relationship with any man on the planet that hasn't been through media socializing him to perceive us in a particular way or expect us to be in those roles. So there is a rope, there is this foot in both worlds where, yes, you have healed the past, but there is still real fear and trauma responses from the present, and you get to honor that and you get to be present with that. And that stops future diseases from manifesting. And it helps us not get into old abusive relationship dynamics. But there are so many red flags that I pick up on nowadays that I would never have picked up as an abusive flag or trigger, even from women before, because of all the healing that I've done. And there are so many ways that I would not have protected myself before as a woman, because I would have been like, I didn't believe I was worth protecting.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. And I think that part of walking through the fire, like the price that we pay for letting go of fear, is being different. And I think it's almost biblical. Like Christ literally said we were supposed to be set apart, right? That we weren't supposed to be like everybody else. And I don't think that's a superiority thing. I think it's that when you are walking with God, when you are walking in that deep divine light, you are protected on evil on another level, and God can see other people's intentions on another level. And that does mean that you are just not as available to be messed around with as you were before you were in that bit. You know, there's also like a lot more to lose, because if when you're in your divine life purpose, if you go down because of somebody smashing your heart or destroying your dreams or killing your self-esteem or whatever, or destroying your financial life, there's hundreds of thousands of people who would be impacted by your gifts and your healing and your truth that just dissolves, it just disappears.
Mhm.
You know, if I think of how many women healers that I know personally who are incredible healers that never stepped into their path because they're busy doing someone's laundry,
Mhm.
right? And someone stole their self-belief when they before they were even old enough to wear a bra, right? And I think about the kind of global impact that would have and how many children wouldn't be traumatized and how many, it's insane,
Yeah.
you know, and we're proactively still being told that we don't need to stand for that. We don't need to care about that. That, you know, that's, you know, there's some sort of, we're demanding and difficult women for owning that these sorts of things are still happening.
Yeah. I appreciate you so much for how you put that all together, because literally this is what you put together is so much present for me in the last, I would say, 5 days. And you put it in words, what I'm like was in between. And exactly what you said. The past, for example, I healed my past, but the sexism, exactly what you said, is still going on. And I literally had a trauma response just 48 hours ago. And the
Mm-hmm.
difference is I did not numb, I did not dissociate. I immediately called a friend and just said, I just need to talk right now because this is happening in my body. And I just started crying because there came an old flash of these situations that I talked about, the assaults. And I haven't been with that because I was so busy judging myself, how I reacted. I was, whatever was in the field was cleared. And suddenly I just was sitting with the realness, what it did in my system, what I still need to tend to and have safety with. And be like, oh, wow, I really got hurt. And I never allowed that. I never wanted to let anybody see that I got hurt, right? Now I feel safe enough to be vulnerable and share in the right spaces my stories, or even now you can see it in my profile. I shared, like in my Heart Space series, very pivot points of my life. And I just said, okay, that feels really aligned to do that now. But, and that was a big liberation, as you do know.
I was about to say, whoa, 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 whoa. This was like such a huge thing. Like, I think this was 9 months worth of deep conversations of how do, and this is something I
Yeah.
resonate with you, because in this sense, I think you were so like me, because I tortured myself over how to share my story and still respect the souls of other people and the like their own suffering and their, to the extent that I think I silenced myself so much trying to answer that question.
Mhm.
And you really went through the fire with that. You really were like, you know, you really sat on it. And then when you started coming out and really doing that, it was like, woo. It was so good to watch. It's still so good to watch.
Yeah, I have been, that was August, right? Like a month ago, like that was one of the most biggest liberations because I really feel this proud, like this being proud, what you told me already for a year, right? Like this being proud of own your story. The angels consistently own your story, be proud of your story. But now I can really feel it. I don't fake it. I can feel it. And this is why I had the space and the capacity to really share it. And even with people would commonly weird, I know I can hold myself now.
Yeah.
And but the difference is exactly what you said. There's still in the present layers that we are dealing with, but sitting with the honesty of, oh, I got hurt. This is maybe on zero, but I'm still having flare-ups. So how can I love on myself better? And I find it interesting because I honestly, right now, I'm still finding the right holy grail, how to also publicly speak about exactly what we're speaking about right now. Because obviously, I'm not interested. Am I having a deja vu now? And that's really crazy because I know we never did this in this life. Okay. But we both, I'm literally having a deja vu. So I was going to say, I'm not into propaganding man hatred or feeding the wound of that. At the same time, I want to speak to what is also on my heart because and that it's still present. And we do need to embody and stand for something. It's not about against, but understanding I will not put my blind eye to that somebody is just really invasive right now. So, and that's very
Yeah,
interesting,
I
right?
think that the idea that speaking truth about a man or a woman's abusive behavior is some sort of hatred creation or propagation is we're back to victim silencing and victim blaming. I think the people that don't want us speaking about the sexism, the racism, the colonialism, the downright narcissism and the greed that's going on in the world are people who, like you said, are either triggered by it because they haven't looked at the collective or their own individual shadow, or who are like, they're playing it superficial. They want it to be about somebody else. Like, I'm spiritual now, so it's not relevant to me. When the reality is we are one. If it's affecting one person, it's affecting all of us. And I think it's also like it's something that's breaking. It's one of the breakthroughs I think social media has done is that for a very long time, the way they controlled young women was by stopping them from having conversations with older women, right? And we were old by their time. Anybody over the age of 30, like 25, was like, do not talk to them, right? Right? They're old, right? So they're like worn and done. And this is how it actually went. And they really humiliated older women and called them hysterical and made us seem like bitter and whiny and housewifey and moany and all of that stuff. And the reality of that, it's kind of like when the guy goes, "Oh, my ex-wife is crazy." It's like, yeah, she's crazy because you don't want me knowing what you did to her. Because if I knew what you did to her, I'm not going to be up for you doing the same thing to me, right? It's that energy of women are not to be trusted, and even women cannot trust other women. And it leads to the reason why women be like our older sister or our mother becomes our first bully, because we were taught that we can't trust each other, guide each other, because otherwise we're not divided. And when women realize, I cried like a baby when I realized that one of the things that was thrown at me a lot when I was in toxic relationships was that I chose that person,
Mhm.
right? And when I realized first through like just general research that it was 1 in 3. And then when I was on social media and the women were really saying, yeah, you chose them because they lied to you. You didn't choose them because you chose the wrong person. You chose them because they literally became everything you wanted. They were strategic. They listened to what you wanted. They pretended to be that thing so that you would give them your heart and your energy and your time so that they could steal that. And someone putting that into words, I cried so long because I was, like I said, I couldn't forgive the part of me that I thought had betrayed me. And then I realized, wait a minute, I didn't betray me. Somebody went out of their way to pretend to be something they weren't so they could manipulate me or steal time, energy, youth, right?
Mhm.
Admiration, validation, status. And what I couldn't fathom, and this is what Marianne Williamson says, we underestimate our own light, but we also underestimate the darkness in the world when we're young because we're so conditioned as women to be naive. Because we would never do that to somebody else. You can't imagine that somebody would ever do that to you.
Mhm.
Right? I can't imagine looking at a man and being like, oh, how can I use him?
I know.
Right? How can I get something from him? I've never looked at a man and go, how can I get his money? I've never thought that. So the idea that a man could look at me and think, how can I get her body? How can I get her time? How can I get her energy without having to give anything in return?
Mhm.
Right?
Yes.
It makes you want to vomit. The idea that that kind of evil can be in a room and is normalized, is you're told that's just what a man is. Gosh, you absolutely need to be able to speak to that without feeling like you're inciting hatred. And the existence of that is hateful and it's wrong. But you are not inciting hate by describing that it exists,
Yeah.
right? You're simply giving voice to and witnessing what's already occurring. And then giving people a way of like exactly what you said, you're giving every woman permission to say, I did not choose this,
Mhm.
right? I was lied to. And to learn how not to, hopefully not to be as easily manipulated and not to be as naive from that place.
Yeah.
But it's very hard, I think, as a young woman, even to listen to the advice of older women, because you really, especially when you're like 16, you want to be 35. You kind of look up to those older women who are like beautiful and powerful, and you want to believe you're as mature as they are and you have all the same knowledge and experience and you're trying on the heels so the idea that, you know, that they're a bit further ahead can be a bit intimidating, I think. I think it can be really hard when you want to be loved so much. so much. It can feel a bit like they're sabotaging you. Be like, oh, they just don't want the relationship to work. They're just criticizing my partner. But trust me, when you're like holding that baby at like 4 o'clock in the morning, or, there's just somebody screaming at you when you should be following your divine life purpose, or literally somebody is like punishing you for having a basic hobby and you can't breathe, it doesn't hit you until you've experienced it. The law of experience is real, right? And I might be wrong. Maybe I was definitely wrong about the guy's side. There might be women who are dark enough to do that. There probably are, with the sister wound out there. But I think the majority of women, we are trying to save other women from having that kind of pain, and it's
We're
hard
thriving
to
in
put into words.
yeah, women thrive in community. And when we're together, when we sit in a circle, worlds are changing.
The
And
world is absolutely changing. I think what you're right about what's rising in response to that.
and I feel like this is where the raw, right? The raw of the feminine is there. And that for me is what holy fire, when I say I stand in fire, is this raw that I found for me is this standing in my truth. And if it makes you uncomfortable, that's a you problem. What comes out in sessions that I really love, and every time it comes out, the women are smiling and I have to smile, is like, you are God's daughter. You are made so wholesome and amazing in God's image. If somebody has a problem with you being you, they have to take it up with God. Good luck with that. Like that came through one time, and like, it is. Like, talk to my creator, have a conversation, pray, meditate with God, have an argument with God why he created me how I am. That's not my problem. Like, to move with that is obviously a daily practice. But yeah, I just need to remind, like, wait, not my circus, not my monkeys.
Not your circus, not your monkeys. And I think it's exactly what you said. It's in that energy of, I have to be my authentic self. And that is going to rile some people up the wrong way, because they're not giving themselves permission to be authentic, but also because we live in a culture that actively tells us not to be,
Yep.
right? We're actively programmed to be perfect, to be nice. So it's very, like, the truth is a lot of things, but nice isn't one of them. It's kind, but it's not superficial. It doesn't lie. It's, you're not, it's not a shallow thing.
Mm-mm. Also, we're taught to be so, I always call it misplaced loyalty. Loyalty to family systems, to structures. And I always say what I understood from God, and I'm standing 100% behind it. How I understand the virtue of loyalty. If it costs you loyalty to you, that's not loyalty, it's self-abandonment. This is fear, emotion. Loyalty always needs to include you first. And so that's a big thing. What I'm also seeing is why I felt very held and seen is in the human consequence. Standing in truth is the grief that comes from either losing family or friends or a surrounding. And I think this is why doing this, walking the path of healing and literally self-reclamation, is really only for the brave ones. And I still find my voice to say it because I don't want to scare people. But at the end of the day, I'm like, what the heck, man? It is either you're spiritual warrior, you stand there, you have courage, you go for it, or you don't even go on the path. I don't have one client that I'm working with who don't have suddenly a change of heart, partners falling away, coming after divorce, or knowing they have to leave, or losing, like, not losing friends that fall away, or like there is a if you go from that self-abandonment to truth, there is a complete
Frequency
initiation.
shift. There is a complete, you cannot go from a state of fear to a state of love and there not be a frequency shift. And
Yeah.
people will fall away in that shift. And they're supposed to. You're not supposed to have people like, you're not supposed to have people that don't really love you and that don't really have good intentions for you in your field. And what you have to achieve, like the purpose that God has put in front of you and everyone on this planet, what we have to achieve, what we have to give, is challenging, even when you have your full energy and your full power, without having people sucking it or pulling it away. Um, I think God is very protective. Like, it's even biblical. God literally says that He won't answer the prayers of men that harm women. Right? It's exactly what He said. You are His daughter, and if you gave your daughter to some dude and he was treating her like rubbish, would you be in a good mood with him that day?
Of course not.
Right? So you can't give. It's the same thing. I can't mistreat my children and have God be, you know, yeah, he'll have a conversation with me. Yeah, he'll heal me, but there's some real reckoning that needs to happen there. Those are beings that are within my responsibility, right? They matter, they're within my care. It's the same thing. When you ask somebody for their heart as a man or as a woman, you have a responsibility to that person. And if you continually violate that responsibility, it's what you said about the systems. Like, genuinely, the reason why women are conditioned with false loyalty is because the world right now would fall apart without us doing the free labor that we do. It just would, right? The free labor went from being from the slave trade to being on women. And for starters, it's not appropriate, right? But it's exactly what you said. Like, I remember the day that I really got it, and it was at some point after my first son was born, and I was deciding whether I was going to stay home or whether I was going to step into my divine life purpose again. And I remember walking into the kitchen and the dishes being piled high in the sink. There being like piles of laundry, and he had some sort of a cold, and I just put him down upstairs, and I knew maximum I had half an hour before he went off again. And I remember thinking, sitting on the couch and meditating and getting the illusion of like, should I go back to work? And I remember hearing Archangel Michael say, it's an illusion. You just get to choose what kind of work, right? You're either going to do work for other people or you're going to stay in divine service. But like, there's no way that the people you're surrounded with right now are going to allow you to stop work, right? It's just the level of contribution that work is going to bring. And I actually find that, like I said, so hard. That was a very deep truth for me to land, that I didn't have the kind of freedom I thought. I didn't have the kind of respect that I thought. I hadn't created that space where, like you said, the sexism was gone. And part of it was back to my brain, you know, the conditioning goes back to, well, you chose wrong or you did this. And then you're like, well, if it's 1 in 3 and that's reported, right? Then what are the chances of choosing wrong? If every second person is going to be taught that you're worthless and that your job is to be, like I said, their loyal servant and their housewife, etc. And that was very hard. Awakening to that when you've been told that it's not happening, when there's no one you can talk to it about.
Yeah.
And when, like, exactly like what you said, you're sitting there going, I thought we were past this. And it's still a trap, right? You wouldn't expect it, but it's a trap. Now you're in it. How are you going to get out of it? And also, like, the catch in my throat when I realized how many women had died here. And I was like, God, how many women have died here doing someone else's dishes, doing someone else's laundry, who was basically never cared about them in the first place.
How much disease comes from that? How much postpartum depression comes from that? Oh, how much inflammation and cancer comes from that, right? Like, how much comes from that?
And we're back to like the worthless wound. And there was so much of it that, like, it's called the invisible load for a reason, but there's nothing invisible about it. What's the load of carrying a house and being treated like you are worthless at the same time, with no financial compensation, with no emotional recognition? It's, you know, it's one of those things. And it's what you said about, like, slavery shows its head in different forms. But I was sitting there going, gosh, you know, I remember doing theta healing, and one of the older women saying that, you know, women were either stuck in slavery archetype or they were stuck in like the sexual archetype as a way of handling the shadow and the masculine. Right. And I remember thinking, that can't possibly be true. That's back to the naivety of being young, right? You want to believe you're different. You want to believe you're chosen. And that's part of the shadow as well. It's the light shadow. You want to believe you're different and you're not going to go through the same stuff. And then when you're in it and you're like, you know, they weren't stupid. They didn't choose wrong. This is the way that it happens to all of us. I said, this is the miracle of suffering, is that it collapsed the illusion of separation. Right? Suddenly I could feel all the other hundreds of thousands of women in the world, and I was no longer thinking that I was smarter than them or more enlightened or more healed, and I was, you know, so much of the unforgiveness that I had for my mom just vanished into thin air. You know, I couldn't understand why so many of my ancestors were so angry, why so many of the older women were so bitter. Suddenly, I had nothing but compassion,
Mhm.
you know, and it's the very interesting, it's a very interesting energy. But I think the reason we've stayed here so, you know, so long in this interview is because I think it's important for people to feel like they can own their whole story and not to cut out the sexism and the racism and the abuse, partly because it will polarize your audience, but partly because the truth is powerful and it will set you and it will set other people free. But it will also make sure that the people who are in your energy, who are in your audience, who don't resonate with that kind of truth, right? Who are comfortable with internalized misogyny, just like people who are comfortable with racism, if you speak up against it suddenly, like you wouldn't be worried about speaking up about immigration or racism. So why be worried about speaking up about misogyny?
Mhm.
Right? Those people should not be in your space. And by allowing them to be in your space, it then makes more spaces where you would meet them, where you would meet men that were misogynistic, where you would meet women that were secretly judging you and thinking you should be a particular way or whatever. But it is quite, like I said, stepping into your power thing, going, no, I'm going to own this.
Mhm.
Right. And like you said, if they're not comfortable with that, then they're not comfortable with that. But I'm not comfortable having people in my space anymore who want women to be silent or accuse them of creating the rage when the reality is there's something really inappropriate happening that should not be happening.
Yeah.
Right. I remember like having this argument actually with my husband about the cleaners in particular. Um, and this idea of it being like a wife's duty, and me really saying that's hours of my life that I could be with my children,
Mhm.
right? That's hours of my life where I could be exercising or taking care of myself, or you know, I have to recover from birth and from all sorts of things, and instead to prove my goodness as a woman we're talking about cleaning. It's like it doesn't, like why would it ever drop into a woman's head that a man had to clean to prove something? If a man can afford a cleaner, you wouldn't ever see a peep, right? It's insane that this is still a conversation, but it is a conversation. And it's not just me. Behind the scenes, I'm very comfortable saying that there isn't a woman that's in a relationship, whether it's with a powerful man or not, that hasn't had to have these conversations. And that still rocks my brain. Because to me, this shouldn't be a conversation,
Yeah, same.
right? But it is, and it's been entrusted to our generation for a reason.
Mm.
I really think it's important that we don't look away from the zeitgeist that our generation has been entrusted with. I really feel like maybe I'm judging them, but I really feel like our parents and often our grandparents really walked away from the issues that their generations were entrusted with. Right. I feel like my grandmother's generation kind of stood up for taking female rights to the next level, for taking civil rights to the next level. And then I feel like the one in between, just there's just this silence.
Yeah, I can literally feel like an image of like a gravestone. We're just gonna bury this. We're just gonna enjoy after, war, creating just house and food and shelter, but we're just gonna bury whatever is present. And I mean, that is one of the biggest things, as I remember you supporting me also with, is releasing the secrets. I remember this, that was a big thing out of deception, self-deception, and the deception that was ingrained on my ancestor line. And that just blew a lot of things away. And that's a different train to go down to be held and be like, I love you whenever you're ready, but this is something that's coming up. And that is for me so powerful because I feel like you said, with coercive control, it's these weird fine spin webs that sometimes I can't see through. It's the same with deception when it's happening in at least my experience in a DNA line. It's that needing another person, that moment being like, okay, wait a minute, what's the truth here? What are you actually feeling? Can we just lift the veil when you know it's safe for you to actually see and feel what's really true for you? Because this fear of losing the part in the ancestor line or losing the part in the family, the
Yeah.
belonging, this deep need. But this deception, yeah, like putting a graveyard stone and just be silent. And I feel like this is why maybe it's extra feels for me, being extra brave of just speaking is because it feels like there's a big unraveling of ancestor lines. And you do know I had a conversation with a certain person and I did feel this like literally feeling an ancestor in both ends breaking a silence that has been there for so many generations. And I got actually for a moment a confirmation that this was a pattern that is just buried. And is it comfortable to be the only one? No. But I also do trust that I've got and I have the right people around me. And probably there are some ancestors somewhere that are like cheering me on. But
I don't
it's
think it's comfortable to be the only one, but I think it's an illusion that we are the only ones. I think the silence is deafening because so many other women in our ancestral line were buried there. It's exactly what you said. Like, how many women have died here with the sexual abuse, with the emotional abuse, with the, because sex was a duty in the marriage as well. Right. And the reason we're able to, the reason we have the privilege to break that silence is because just 2 or 3 generations ago, somebody stood up and said that we should have those rights and didn't care how many people called them difficult,
yeah.
right? Didn't care the price they had to pay. And by God, did they have to pay a price, right? But without those structures in place, we like, you would have been homeless. You couldn't do anything without a man or a brother to sign up for you. And in many cultures, this is still the same conversation,
Yeah.
right? And exactly what it's like, breaking the secrets is huge. And like being able to voice the secrets is huge. And I feel like there's a disillusionment because oh, please don't kill me, but the illusion of romance that's been wrapped around that, I know it's I'm sorry to all like the younger, I'm sorry, right? But it's a trap. Part of the programming is you get told that you should give everything and all this love to this happily ever after, and you should be willing to look away from anything that's telling you something's wrong. And that is just bloody dangerous and terrifying.
Yeah.
Right. But it's what women are, especially young women, are conditioned to do from be nice, look over it, don't challenge it. And this is what be submissive means.
Don't be complicated, right? Don't make a fuss about it.
Don't make a fuss about it. And the reality is the standards for the whole of the children of mankind is suffering. The children of mankind are being forced into slavery. They're being forced into sexual abuse. They're being forced into emotional abuse and domestic violence because we have been trapped in this belief that we are making too much of a fuss. And it's what you said about the fierce feminine. We are the protectors. We are the protectors of the children. It is not superficial to make a fuss. You hold the future of human progeny in your womb. This is the deepest truth,
Yep.
right?
And this is where I turned into the lioness every time there was this challenge. I was like, if that would happen to my child, if I would have a child, I felt the lioness going like, nope, either you change or you won't see my child again. And in that moment, I was like, in the beginning, I was like, why am I not giving this to my child? That was the beginning. And then through the healing journey, I'm like, wait, and now we're gonna stand up. So it's that inner, like you said, learning again that I'm worthy of being protected and that I'm worthy of making my choices and that building that self-trust again, because it's the grief that's coming up in between of like, wow, I've really missed myself all these years and put man on pedestals and was so obsessed with that person. And it feels weird. And at the same time, exactly right now. It's like I don't recognize myself, but in a good way, that I'm like, maybe I'm just not interested right now. Like either you rock my world in a really good way and you expand my purpose, or you just don't even stand in the doorway. Like it's like,
Yeah.
really coming to releasing all the stories how we were told what's important in our lives and rather
Yeah,
like,
this is part of like the whole the illusion of romance crumbling, is that you are
yeah,
no longer centralizing men and you
yeah,
are now really centralizing God.
yeah,
And that makes it possible for a divine union to happen in the appropriate way. It makes it possible for real romantic love to happen in the right way. But exactly what I said, when you've been conditioned to believe that somebody else can love you in a way that you don't love yourself, all the laws of the universe go against it. Right. And when you're in the belief that love is sacrifice, love is being controlled, love is submission, love is basically you exchanging your freedom to become someone's servant. Like, all of those are not love. They never were, they never will be. It's exactly what we said about the love of a child. If somebody said to my son, I will love you, but you have to give up all of your dreams and all of who you are and clean my bathrooms and do my laundry, I would be like, get away from my child. Right? I don't know what crazy perversion you've got going on,
Yeah.
But because you know it's your job to help them self-actualize, you know it's your job to help them be all of who they are. It's just in your bones. And exactly what I said, why would I extend that to my child and not hold it for myself?
Yeah.
And we are profoundly worth protecting, because not just because of the children, but other women learn how to be in their full selves. Like you said, I'm not man hating, don't get me wrong. I've got two sons and I love men. But to love men does not mean to lie to them. To love men does not mean to coddle them. To love men does not mean to look away from the darkness and the wounds and be like, oh, it's all going to be okay. And I'm just going to do whatever you want me to do. And it's like, that's not love.
No. And also the shaming that happens when you have standards as a woman. I remember I was told I'm high maintenance and I had no self-worth. But it's like, oh, why are you single? You know, in my 20s, why are you single? You're pretty like this. Are you high maintenance? No, it's low self-worth. They don't even like I don't even know what high maintenance is. Now having my standards, I'm like, call me that, then out of the door that I know you're definitely not for me, you know? Because and if yes, I am high maintenance. Of course I have standards and values, but this, you know how much work it took me? So I do know that. And this is why it's so important for me to be in the right, like for example, the MIT, you know, having the community of healers where we grow as humans together and as women and men. Um, but also having in a private life the right women around me is this for me like a non-negotiable who celebrate me and who also hold me in my pain and they still see my power. They never see me as a victim. That's for me was the most healing things is being seen and validated and like I know you're going through a really tough time right now. And I still felt I'm seen as the powerful being that I am. Because I never received that when I was young, and that receiving that in a community and friends around me changed everything because it allowed me to just be honest and then also having women who are celebrating. And that's what I'm seeing a lot with the women I work with. I'm like, who's around you? Like the angels show me, like, you're not having the right people around you. You have people gossip. You have people who are not, you need women. And if you need to go to online events or somewhere else, but women who celebrate you for having standards, women who call you out when you want to lower it, like, Queen, what are you doing? Right?
Yeah.
Not, we're not going to do that. We do need that for each other, right? So I think that's another important part to be like, who's surrounding you? Like I love being held
Yeah.
accountable and do that for others, my closer people, of course. But yeah,
Yeah,
that
I think
level
I
of
think with the misogyny thing, I don't like the word sexism because it triggers people so much, but I use it because I think it's an important word. But I think misogyny is not unique to men. And I think women are very triggered by other women. If a woman hasn't allowed herself to dream, if she hasn't allowed herself her own freedom, if she's, you know, it's like there's it's brutal, especially with parenting, especially with and especially on social media right now. There's I would say it's the level of a crucifixion what women do to other women. Absolutely, you need to have women around you that care about you, and you need to move away if you feel that has changed. A relationship has the ability to change. And sometimes people will be fine with you as long as you're in victim mode, but the moment you're not, they start getting triggered by it. And also like there'll be, there's multiple things that can come up around that, but absolutely, who is around you, and celebrating is such a big thing, because celebration is the multiplication of joy, right? It's the permission to multiply that good energy. And it's also the reason why women do everything. We do it so we can share it with the people that we love. And that's really heartbreaking, going through like a best-selling book or whatever, not being able to share it with people because you're worried about what,
yeah.
right? But I think here's where we're going to bring it to our completion, is that we went on this insane, incredible journey together. And it's been a love story, I think. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview and for coming with us. Last question for you. What would you say to somebody who's thinking about joining and they're kind of either on the fence or they're wondering if it's for them?
I would say you already have a calling, so follow that calling and trust that you are held, trust that you will be, first of all, you're held, you're not doing this alone. But I feel like it's about you right now making the choice to follow that calling. Because if you're already here, you're already tipping your toes in, like I've done it, you know already this is for you. This is because your soul knows it will change you to become so who you are. It's okay to feel scared, but do it anyway. Because it's like this is the choice. The fear will, don't wait till the fear is gone. If you already feel the calling, then move with that. It will not change, it will not shift.
Yeah, the fear around growth is never gone. It kind of goes a bit quieter, but it never you're about to take a massive expansion. It always has something to say.
And the other thing that I would say is forget for a moment about, oh, it's going to be a certification, right? I would say medical intuitive, yes, you're going to be certified, but I feel like that sounds contradictory now, but don't do it to be certified because medical intuitive is such a personal development journey. This is, you don't get it. It's not like I do a 3-day course and I get my certificate. I'm so proud and I have another, patch on a healer. This is you meeting yourself. So I would say if you feel scared, great, because you meeting yourself. This is going to be a really great love story, what you just said. Are you ready to go on a date for yourself for the next 10 months? If yes, do it. If you still want to abandon yourself, okay, but don't do it. Like it's like you're already here. You're already here and understand it's way beyond a certification. This is who you become as a person, as a healer. You will grow so much, including abundance. Like every area will expand. So to
Yeah,
bring in that perspective, yes, you become certified, but this is for me the side note on it. It's who I'm becoming. Like this was one of the best decisions I made was jumping in. It was the right time. Look at me. I needed my 4 years. But I do believe when you know, you know. And I knew, and I still had a moment of being scared. I remember talking to you. But I cleared up the fears. The next thing is talk to Sky or Hera. If you have fears, because you're not alone, you were held, right? You didn't sugarcoat it, you were honest with me. And then I did it and I felt really good, even if I was scared and you moved through it. But
I
that's
think with medical intuition, you can expect to have persecution wounds come up. You can expect to have, the whole like gifts thing come up. Like, am I really that powerful? Am I really that amazing? Is this really even possible? Can things really even be healed? Or is it like massive imposter syndrome stuff? And I think also that I be held because the
hmm
biggest um the biggest political and religious assassinations have been because of healers,
hmm
right? Because that ability to heal creates so much trust and so much unconditional love in God and in community and in humanity that it threatens real power just by existing. But that doesn't mean it's not who you are. It doesn't mean it's not the right path. It just means, you have an amazing, you were supposed to be extraordinary. You can't expect to have an ordinary life. And extraordinary lives require a certain level of excellence. They require a certain level of showing up. They require a certain level of commitment. But absolutely. I'm so glad that you joined us. And I couldn't be more proud of you. Sienna is currently running Holy Fire, which is her signature program. I saw her start launching it. Was it last week?
yes. Yeah.
So it's just been full blown launch. It is incredible. I encourage you to check out her page. All of her information is below. Sienna also did a healing demonstration with me, which is also on our healing pages as well for Medical Intuitive. But if you're feeling called to work with her for one-to-one, or if you want to reach out to her about Medical Intuitive, please do so. Um, Thank you so much for staying with us at the end of the interview. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we both did.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do our closing prayer. O great Spirit, Father, Sky, Mother, Earth, the winds, the waters, my Father, my Mother, Atanaha, all that is. We thank you for our lives and we thank you for these good, good people. We thank you for all that we are and all that we are to become. We dedicate our time spent together and our relationships with one another to you. We ask that our suffering be ended and our pain be lifted to the love and to the peace that lay beyond. Aho, Amen, Namaste.